2012, October. Pew poll. Coming to you from the mother of the New Jerusalem, Mary Omni, from the royal house of King David. Pew poll. What does pew stand for? When you hold your nose, don't you go with the word pew? When something is foul, don't you say pew? So much for the pew polls. Pew. They are dung like all polls because they are based on a dung public progressive democracy, which is total opposite of the constitutional republic that supremes the minority in the contract of the land of America. So pew polls can put Romney so far ahead of Obama, President Obama, to the moon. And they don't mean anything because they have no contractability. Pew means they're dung contracts. They telling you what they are when they say pew. Pew evaluates and they calculate dung contractors. Who are the dung contractors? All immigrants who came to America that contracts with mule dung. Who is the mule? The mule is the U.S. corporation that they call their government. How you going to call a U.S. corporation your government and it doesn't have one amendment? And this is your government. Right, it's your government without one amendment. But it's not your mule. The mule came with 40 acres to black Americans, along with 1600. 1600 is the address of the White House. 1600 square rooted is 40 acres. And since the 60% or the 3/5 was about a vote, the 60% means the black man has 60% of the vote if you just want to base it on the 3/5. Because he couldn't consent, 3/5 couldn't consent to nothing. So he couldn't even consent to doing away with it as a vote. He couldn't even consent, or we couldn't even consent to doing away with it as a human capital investment. So it still stays in there even though we're legal, constitutional citizens. A lot of people thought they can throw the slaughterhouse cases away. Look up the slaughterhouse cases. It's the first interpretation of the 14th. Judge Miller tried to tell these fools, you ain't going to do nothing because the 14th go along with the 13th, 14th, 15th, their Reconstruction Amendment slave remedies. Everybody wanted the slave remedy. What a slave got to have, I got to have. And that's why we got a pew poll, because Christ wasn't having it. Christ came back in 1800 to liberate Judah. He told the Daniel prophecy started in 1800 to 1800. The Daniel prophecy started at 1800. And it finished in 1870. That was the 70 years, the 70 more years. Was the last 3.5 years, 1867 to 1870, with the 15th Amendment. And the 15th Amendment is the New Jerusalem Wall. Okay? So your votes don't mean nothing. You came here and you squatted on someone else's birthright land. Almost 200 million of you running to a dung Babylon, media drones, herd of animals, swearing majority can outdo a supreme contract that's written in blood of the revolutionaries, the slaves, the Indians, and soldiers later on, Buffalo soldiers. That's why polls, and the top poll is called Pew. They telling you you stink, along with your ideals that you're going to supreme the Constitution. 1600 White House square roots to 40 acres. Prove we didn't get the 40 acres. Prove the 15th is not a guaranteed voting amendment with at least 60%. Prove that we didn't inherit the Bill of Rights along with it. Because if we became constitutional citizens, we became coextensive with the Constitution. Coextensive means from front to back. Blacks are the walking Constitution, which means they marry to the Electoral College poll. And when they got the Bill of Rights and became full citizens of the Constitution, the highest law in the supreme land, that came with 100% along with their 60%. Because 3/5 can't consent to do away with nothing. 3/5 just inherited everything. They even inherited the 3/5 in the Constitution. Thomas Jefferson made sure they had, remember, he had a black woman named Sally Hemings. And he made sure his children was in this document. He knew he had a black woman, and he made sure her children was taken care of. He made sure it was written that she and her children were investors. So later on, when it come down to it, whether he told you or not, Thomas Jefferson is from a black womb descendancy. And Sally Hemings was too. So they wasn't as far apart as you think. And he wrote 3/5 to make sure Sally Hemings' children was in this document, because he knew later on that 3/5 would be as a human capital investment, and that non-consent would have legality in this country. And it became legal in 1868 with the 14th Amendment that blacks inherited, which means it's a non-consented amendment. So the pew polls is for dumb contractors who think a democratic progressivism going to supreme the Constitution. I'm going to tell you, President Obama got the black vote. He got the constitutional citizens vote, 97%. Now, you got to prove that you got a higher contract bigger than the Constitution. Because whether you like it or not, you can't separate black from the Constitution. They're the only constitutional national citizens. So in your dream world, you think you can separate them, but you can't. And if he have 97% or 90% of the black American vote, then he has 97% of the constitutional vote. So he stays at 1,600 regardless of your pew polls. You can't do nothing with the Supreme Contract. And if you think you're going to mob them out, military them out, then you're going to see the fact, you're going to realize the fact that God's army is on earth in this 2012. And I'm going to tell you, believe it or not, I ask you just to consider it. See, because I don't have to beg you to believe it. I'm just asking you to open your mind for consideration. Christ is here. I gave birth to the Christ. God's army is upon earth. Ask your military and red flags in Alaska. They hiding. They ask the UN who running underground now. All your leaders of Dracon evil is running for cover. Your Illuminati Dracon masters that upheld your majority trampling is falling out of the sky. They running for cover. They ducking. Your UN who came here and squatting on American soil, trying to pillage with all your nations coming here and squatting, they running underground. And your pew poll is still pewing your polling, making you think you got something you ain't. You have no contractability in America. Just because a dog can squat out babies on the land don't make them a citizen. Citizenship been non-consented with since 1868. And if you ain't got citizenship, you ain't got voting rights. It's been non-consented since 1868 because blacks couldn't consent for the 14th. 3/5 couldn't consent for the 3/5 to be put in the Constitution. 3/5 couldn't consent for the 13th. 3/5 couldn't consent for the 1866 non-consented national civil rights legislation that gave them jurisdiction and enforcement of all contracts on American soil automatically, constitutionally, and constitutionalized in 1868. 3/5 couldn't consent for the 1867 purchase of Alaska that's in between the 13th and 14th Amendment that belongs to blacks as inheritance territory, not a state, just because you propped a corporation up on there. Forget that, because it's non-consented territory. Just like the 14th and non-consented birth citizenship right. So you have no rights. If you had rights, the judge wouldn't always process you as due processors, which is dookie processors, pew processors. You know why he does that? Because the privileges and immunities is in the real 14th. Because as a non-consenter, you didn't non-consent to any contract, so you have privileges and immunities from all contracts. That means Michelle Obama and President Obama have privileges and immunity from all your done contractual votes in every state that you do, wherever you come from. You might as well take your ass back. While you whoring out here, your hoarded out land is being hoarded out to corporations black going to own. Now pew on that.